All right, everybody. Ooh, loud tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to our August work session meeting. Ms. Sugars, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Goodwin?
Here.
Mrs. Judge?
Here.
Mrs. Matlack?
Here.
Mrs. Seidel? Mrs. Carpolino?
Here.
Mrs. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Here.
Dr. Wong?
Here.
Dr. Dickinson?
Here. All right, we'll open up tonight with our first public comment. The comments must be regarding items on the special action agenda for this evening. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes for your remarks. Please note the light will turn green. The green light will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining. The light will turn red when your 3 minutes are up. Anybody have anything for the action agenda tonight? No? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. All right, so we'll do our special action agenda. Mr. Tomlinson, would you move the C&I agenda for us, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, approval of high school textbooks for the 2017-2018 school year. Item number 2, approval of services contract with New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired 2017-2018. And item 3, approval of out-of-district student placements for the 2017-2018 school year. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Second, Mrs. Scarpolino. Any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Tomlinson?
I need to abstain from C&I item number 3 for students placed at Bancroft. Yes to the remainder.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Judge?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpolino?
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson?
Yes, to all. Mr. Goodwin, would you move the B&F agenda for us, please?
Yes, I will. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. 1, approval of bill list. Do I have a second? Mrs. Schultz. Are there any questions? If not, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Judge?
I need to abstain on the bill list regarding the Cooper Health System. Yes to the rest.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino?
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz?
Need to abstain to Bayada Home Health on the bill list. Yes to the rest.
Mr. Tomlinson?
I need to abstain from Bancroft NeuroHealth on the bill list. Yes to the remainder.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson?
Yes. Mrs. Judge, would you move the HR agenda, please?
Yes, I will, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointments certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, contract renewal, SAC and EDCC program. Number 6, assignment salary change certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 8, other compensation certificated. Number 9, other compensation non-certificated. And I would like to point out that we have an addendum to the special action numbers, additions to numbers 3, 4, 6, and 8 on our pink list, pink sheets. Do I have a second? Mr. Goodwin, are there any questions? Seeing no questions, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Judge?
Yes to all.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong?
I need to abstain on item 3, counseling number F, counseling internship by Rowan. Yes to the rest.
Dr. Dickinson?
Yes to all. And I'll yield the mic to Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. I just wanted to recognize I believe we have 2 new staff members who were just approved here tonight. First, with the pain contingency, is Miss Lori Brandley. Lori, if you want to come up to the microphone. Sure. Oh, do you want to? I see Dr. Rickensreed behind you. It appears that you do. Sure. Dr. Rickensreed, did you want to introduce?
Yes, I would. Okay. You have to move over, Lori. Okay. Hi, this is Lori Brandley. I'm happy to announce she'll be our new 4th grade teacher because Miss Melissa Santiago had moved over to Cooper to be a guidance counselor. Lori was a long-term sub for Melissa Santiago for the first part of the year in 4th grade, and then for pregnancy leave, and then went to 2nd grade for another pregnancy leave. She went from 4 to 2. The amazing thing that my staff will say about her is she ran like she was in Thomas Paine for the last 20 years. She was helping Mrs. Santiago immediately clean and sort and organize her room. She met parents at the door, introduced herself. They were confused a little bit because one son had her as 4th grade. The other came home and goes, I have Miss Brandley. Like, no, you don't. Your brother does. And because Miss Santiago came back. But she was part of it. She was part of the Thomas Paine family immediately. I had a lot of raving reviews from parents, and you know that long-term subs are from Source for Teachers. So from there to work through the system, become acclimated, and be a Cherry Hill fan, and obviously was our #1 candidate to be pushed forward, and met Dr. Milage, and I would agree he made the right choice for that matter. I appreciate it. And I thank the board because, as I said before, you're the last people to have to say yes. So Lori Brandley, and she brought her family because it is a big day when you start on your adventure to be a teacher. She was a teacher before and then became a stay-at-home mom, and then is back in the profession. So it's brand new, but it's brand new because it's been some years since then. So I thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Lori Brandley.
Thank you. Do I have to talk? I don't have to talk, right? Thank you. That's what I say. Thank you. And I look forward to working for Cherry Hill School District and Thomas Paine. Very excited. So thank you very much.
Go around, shake hands.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
And then also in the audience tonight is Miss Stephanie Metal. Stephanie, if you wave to everybody. I don't believe that Stephanie wants to come to the microphone. We also have her come around and shake hands. Stephanie's going to join us, and she's going to be teaching general music at Stockton and at Cooper. So Stephanie, welcome.
You guys don't have to leave. You can stay for the meeting. All right. Okay. So then we'll move on to the P&L. Ms. Scarpolino, would you move the P&L agenda for us?
Certainly, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. #1, a rejection of the harassment, intimidation, and bullying investigation decision, as the board finds this was an incident of harassment, intimidation, or bullying. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge, any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars?
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes. And I don't believe we have any strategic planning items from Mrs. Matlack this evening. So we'll move right into our work session. And then Mrs. Seidel is absent. Mr. Tomlinson's going to update us on the CNI committee meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Dickinson. So, as Lisa always says, it was a very packed meeting. So, the first item we reviewed was the ESSA stakeholder meeting presentation. So, Dr. Mahan reviewed the ESSA presentation that was held on July 12th. She reviewed the mandated consultation meetings that must be held in accordance with ESSA, which is a detailed overview of Title I, Title II, Title III, Title III immigrant, and Title IV funds and their uses. And she gave an explanation of Title IV funds which this district received this upcoming year. Answered a few questions around Title I funded Camp Infusion program, details regarding data sources and analysis regarding how the programs would proceed in the future, as well as some trends and feedback from the ESSA stakeholder meeting survey. So the next thing we moved on to was textbook adoption. So we had 3 textbooks that were presented for the AP seminar, which is a new class, a new section of classes. It's 3 classes, a series of 3 classes that'll be offered. And the 3 textbooks we took a look at were Reading the World, Patterns for College Writing, and The Bedford Researcher. And then we reviewed the professional development plan chart for fiscal responsibility. So Dr. Campisi distributed the individual school performance plans chart of fiscal responsibility for the 2017-2018 school year. We also had an update from the about 3 of the upcoming theatrical productions that are currently through the new going through the new approval process. Dr. Mahan already also mentioned that she'll be providing updates on the research request by Dr. Powers, and Mrs. Matlack followed up regarding full-day kindergarten, and we talked a little bit about Barclay specifically having a lot of excess land around the school. If there would be, if we could discuss as part of our 2020 planning, using that excess land to build on for a K center. So throwing that into the mix. So, and that's what we talked about. So thank you very much. Any questions? Anybody? All right, Dr. Dickinson.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin, would you discuss the BNF committee meeting, please?
Yes, I will. So for BNF, we went through a number of the projects and got a status on some of the projects that are taking place in the district over the summer. We talked about the east wall and the foundation work that's underway. There's some problems and issues that's going on there, but they're being worked through, and that work is moving forward. The Barclay Security Project is underway, and it's scheduled to be completed at the end of October. We spoke about the Kingston Soffit project that has begun and is scheduled to be done before school starts in the fall. We also discussed the lead remediation. Early in the year, there was lead testing, and that lead remediation is is moving forward. The district hired a licensed plumber, and he's begun installing bottle filling stations, and the plan is for all those stations to be installed in the schools before fall starts. We also spoke about a couple of resolutions that we'll be putting forward. One, the insurance evaluation for, it was determined that the excess insurance was only $5 million, and that it was increased to $20 million. And also we spoke about revised hourly rate for our board solicitors company, I guess law firm, and it was an increase of $5, and it's been a long time since we've been at 180, and it was just raised to 185. So not a huge increase, but it's been a long time since that rate's been changed. Those were the major items we covered. Yeah. I'm just looking at my list here, and yeah, I believe I captured everything there. Any questions? Oh, Mrs. Judge.
I didn't want to just start talking without at least you knowing who was going to talk. When the Barclay security thing has changed, maybe a field trip or at least photos? Oh, excellent. Right, great. So I'm not the
Great
first to
idea.
think of that idea. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Yes.
One thing that I took away from the meeting was the I guess they're hydration stations that we installed. Once they got all done with them, they ended up having a recall. So we were going to have to take them out and return them, but they sent out kits, I believe, to allow us to do our own remediation. So I thought that was kind of a comical way to end up the lead water problem.
Yep. Okay. I'll turn it back to Dr. Dickinson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goodwin. And I believe Mrs. Scarpellina is going to report on HR in Mrs. Judge's absence.
That's right. We met on August 1st. We talked about two issues. One was recruitment. We had an update on the recruitment, and it was for the 2017-2018 school year with a list of vacant positions were reviewed. We're happy to see that there was number of positions open where it was quite low compared to at least last year. It's the only other year I have to compare it to, but I think we all thought that it was pretty low. It's about 10 or 11 positions now. So we're hoping that, or at least optimistic that most of those will be filled before the start of the school year, not all of them. So that was good. Then we also talked about, we had an update on negotiations, which the committee discussed the negotiation process for the current bargaining unit contracts, which are all set to expire on June 30th of 2018, so coming sooner than you'd think. And there'll be initial meetings with CHEA in the fall. So I think we're all happy to get sort of a jump on it and really get down to working that out before, hopefully, the contracts expire. The next HR committee meeting will be on Tuesday, September 5th. That's it. Any questions? Dr. Dickinson?
Okay, thank you. And we'll stick with Mrs. Scarpellino for P&L.
Alrighty. The committee met on Monday, July 31st. We had some old business, which was a second reading of a draft policy, 5116, which is education of homeless children. The New Jersey Department of Education basically removed the phrase awaiting foster care placement from the definition of homelessness. So that is no longer considered homelessness for the federal McKinney-Vento Act. So that language needed to be changed, but there were really no other changes to the policy. So this was reviewed and discussed and then moved forward for a second reading to be brought to the full board for adoption. Our new business was a first reading of a draft policy and regulation, which is 5330.01, which is the administration of medical marijuana. And this is a mandatory policy and regulation that was presented and discussed. District protocols were proposed for establishing the verification of the New Jersey Department of Health's registration process for a primary caregiver and the student. And there's some pretty strict procedures for this regulation. So there needs to be a single primary caregiver, and both that caregiver and the students have to have a proper identification from the State Department of Health. Then we also, as a district, need to identify location on school grounds where medical marijuana would be administered. The principal has the authority to verify that it absolutely needs to be administered on school grounds. That there isn't some way that can be done either before or after. So that does allow us to make sure that this has to take place on school grounds. And there are prohibitions on the administration of the medical marijuana to a student by smoking or other forms of inhalation. So they cannot be smoked, it can't be inhaled in any way. It has to be administered in a different format. The primary caregiver at all times is responsible for the medication and for administering the medication and then for removing the medication from school grounds. There was some adjustment to the policy regarding final decisions to allow the type of this type of medication on the grounds were made. We wanted to make sure, even though the principal might, be able to designate locations, best places for this to happen in their school, the superintendent would have the final say on sort of the protocol of how everything would be administered. And there were a few other areas we were looking into, because if a student is on a field trip and the field trip is outside of New Jersey, what happens in that case? If we're transporting the student and maybe the primary caregiver. So these are other issues that Dr. Campisi is looking into for us. But we felt that at this point, because it's a mandatory policy and it was in pretty good shape, we would move forward for the first reading by the full board. Other new business was a memorandum agreement with law enforcement. The district recently received communication from the Department of Ed regarding the yearly memorandum of agreement with law enforcement. This is something annually. Every year we revisit and we renew with the law enforcement officials. But this year we were told by the Department of Ed that they are revising this at the state level, and so we should just continue to operate under the 2016-2017 memorandum of agreement with local law enforcement. And Dr. Campisi did verify that it's not like we had to re-adopt or re-sign the 2016. We could just continue on with that. And so that's what we agreed we should be doing. And we had no public comment because we had no public, because it's too nice these days and nobody wants to go to meetings. And I think, let's see. Oh, yes, one last thing. We discussed the website compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. An update was provided regarding the actions taken to ensure that the website complies with the act. The memorandum of compliance date is January 18th, 2018. We are hoping, correct me if I have this wrong, Dr. Campisi, to have it done by December of 2017. It's in pretty good shape. Again, there are certain areas where we're making sure, we're tweaking it to make sure that it is in compliance. But generally, we're pretty comfortable that we will have it done prior to the mandatory compliance date. And I think that was about it. Any questions? Dr. Dickinson?
Thank you, Mrs. Scarpolino. Good work doing double duty this week. Mrs. Matlack, could you share strategic planning committee meeting notes with us?
Certainly. We had a full agenda, and we met on Tuesday, August 1st. We started off with Mr. Middleton updating us on the status of the long-range facilities plan. He has visited all of the schools and is in the process of completing interviews with middle and high school principals. He expects to have the plan ready for input into the state's long-range facilities plan program by September. The completion of the plan will be crucial to our referendum project decision-making. And then the rest of our meeting discussed different aspects of the referendum. We talked about the timeline for the referendum, and Mrs. Sugars shared that with us, and that timeline included the determination of the scope of projects, the project application submission process, the statutory resolution dates, and the Board of Election requirements that we need to meet. Next up, we talked about the project focus, and Mrs. Sugars provided a summary of items for the referendum project categories that we'll focus on, and it's going to focus on 5 general categories. The first one is upgrade of instructional spaces, and this could include, but may not be limited to, small group instruction, bathroom facilities for kindergarten classrooms, and all-purpose rooms. And the second category, security, again, may include, but not limited to, vestibules, cameras, perimeter lighting, reconfiguration of administrative spaces. Third, infrastructure, accessibility, HVAC, plumbing, and roofs. The fourth is community spaces, our auditoriums, and our athletic facilities. And fifth is a general category of hard surfaces, bless you, which would include paving and milling and curbing and sidewalks, site lighting, utility upgrades, storm drainage, those kind of things. As we go through our discussions, we will narrow down what will be included from those categories. We also talked about the communication plan going forward, and Mrs. Wilson reviewed with us a draft of the plan, and the plan included communication with all stakeholders associated with the district, and we also discussed how to reach those community members who do not have an affiliation with the district, and how best to reach out to them, as you know, whether you have children in the district or not. If you're a resident of Cherry Hill, you are a member of our community, and we need to reach out to everybody in our community and inform them about what's going on and how that will affect our schools, how that will affect our community. And so we discussed ways to reach out to different groups and how to do that. And we'll have more in-depth discussion in the future on how to do that. We talked about public relation firms. Mrs. Sugars shared our board policy and New Jersey Administrative Code as it pertains to using public relations firms. The committee discussed the difference between a grassroots campaign effort in regards to the referendum as opposed to a public relation firm promoting that. And Mr. Middleton spoke of how the Haddonfield School District handled communications for their recent successful bond referendum vote. During that portion, I made an inquiry of if we could get an update from the township on current and future housing projects. And Mr. Bart said that he would contact the township to arrange for a representative to come to our strategic planning meeting and provide that update. We had done that in the past. Last year, we did not have the opportunity to have somebody from the township come and update us. So we're going to, get on that again and get that information from the township, because there's a lot of things going on in the township, and we're moving forward as well. So we need to coordinate and make sure that we have the correct information going forward. Public comment. We had 2 community members at our meeting, and they spoke about involving the Ed Foundation in our communications program. And Mrs. Stoffman is in the audience, and I expect that she will come to the microphone at the end of the meeting, possibly. But she has graciously offered to partner with us through the Ed Foundation in communicating and gathering support for the referendum going forward. And we also had comments about full-day kindergarten, the public relations firm, and project planning. Does anybody on the committee have anything to add, or are there any other any questions? Dr. Wong.
Yeah. One question is that does the committee talk about the targeted amount of money that we hope that we can achieve sort of through the referendum, or that's the first question. And let me finish the second question. Second question is, it says on the timeline, it says board adopts the CHPS 2020 strategic plan. So what's the relationship between this referendum and also the strategic 2020 plan? So is going to be an addendum to the plan, or it's going to be a separate matter?
We have not spoken about numbers yet because we have not gotten a list together of the specific projects. Our debt service ends, and so we can, I believe, Mrs. Sugar's $60 million we can incur without affecting the tax rate at all. And but beyond that, we have not spoken about any numbers because we don't have a list of projects yet. But that will be future meetings. And regarding the 2020 plan, I think Dr. Malash, I'll ask him to address that for you.
So ultimately, we'll ask the board to adopt Cherry Hill 2020 plan. So it's the follow-up. We spent all of last year going through strategic planning process, guiding us to where we are. So that'll be the precursor to the referendum. What gets adopted in the 2020 plan will then be transitioned into the actual adoption of the referendum projects. So it's the planning process on our end as a district, the Board of Education making the commitment that this is what they believe, this is what the board chooses they want to do, and then transitioning that into a referendum that will turn around and then on September 25th of 2018 ask the community to support what the board has already made a determination that they value and that they want to do.
Mrs. Judge.
So on this list also, the dates, there's Dr. Malash's first Saturday community meeting on August 26th of this month, August 26th. Is that going to be here?
It is not. So at all of your spots, this is the draft of the communications plan that we've gone through. This is what Mrs. Wilson went through last week. So I asked her to share this with everybody because we'd like to publish it this week. One of the things that I'll be adding this year are Saturday sessions. I'll do 12 of them during the course of the year. So we'll do one in August, and I'll go to all 12 of the elementary schools. We have 2 scheduled in Barbara in October and in March, I believe. I don't currently have one scheduled in June. We'll save a June date as a possibly snow date. But we'll do each of the elementary schools, and we'll invite the community to come in 9 to 10:30. They want to talk, see the school, talk about issues going on, but just kind of expand the opportunity for folks to be able to come out within their own small communities. As we've gone through the last year with the strategic planning process, we've heard from a lot of folks about the importance of the neighborhoods and the community schools, and how people feel the connection. So we figured if we could go out to them and provide opportunity, not only just people that have kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, or who had kids, but people who live, as Mrs. Matlack talked about, that don't have children anymore, but that's just in their neighborhood. And it's quiet Saturday morning. So I've scheduled a dozen of them. When we publish this, we'll publish those dozen dates as well for the year.
Any other questions? Okay. Back to you, Dr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. I don't believe we have any new business. Anybody have new business? No? Okay. All right, so we'll move into our second public comment. You may now comment on any issue. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes for your remarks. Please note that the green light will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining. The light will turn red when your 3 minutes are up.
It's on.
It is on?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Eleanor Stoffman, 4401 Sagemore Drive. I'm happy to be here tonight, especially since I did attend the Strategic Planning Committee, and I'd like to offer that the Cherry Hill Education Foundation would welcome the opportunity to partner with you in any way possible. I think one thing that came to my mind is your timetable when you were going over it, and how important our big event, which is in May for Dancing with the Cherry Hill Stars, is a time when a great number of the community is together. A lot of PR takes place with that fundraiser, and I think we could, offer some great ideas and work together in ways to communicate your message. Off the top of my head, we have our program, which is gets thicker and thicker each year, but our printer came up with a new binding so it can grow even bigger. And so we wanted to offer at least like a double-page spread in any way you would like to present your information. Also, we always have a place on an information table. We can always have something there, or anything else that would fit into your plan for to get the message out, especially because it's before the end of school and you're going to be needing as much exposure, you know, during that time, and then summertime, and then the fall. So it's very exciting. I think it's an exciting project. I see it as all positive because it's everything we've been wishing for so many years, and hope we can get as much possible into a dollar amount that everybody is comfortable with. The second part I'd like to talk about is our golf tournament in October. We always have it on the first Wednesday. We have a new title for our golf tournament. It's called Champions for Children. We were looking for something that was catchy. We didn't have to hire a PR firm to come up with it. Instead, we borrowed it from another golf tournament, but they said it was okay. So we really like that. We like to have a little spark. We like to include as many people as possible to play golf. And as you all received your invitation as board members to come to the dinner as our guest, we hope you can join us. And we've also added another aspect. My timing is almost up. The afternoon, all the golfers are on the golf course, so we wanted to use our time wisely and maybe include more people than ever. So we're having a games for grants. We'll have game tables where people will sign up in advance and pay in advance to play bridge, canasta, mahjong, and cherry hillopoly. And people will sign up for specific games and come at 1:30, spend the afternoon, and stay for dinner. And it'll be charged as a donation to the Cherry Hill Education Foundation. So I have some of those letters for you with me if you might want to hand to some of your neighbors and friends. So at the end of the night, I'll give them to you. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay, well, motion to adjourn. Mrs. Judge, Mr. Goodwin. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.